He rode into town with nothing but dust on his boots and silence in his eyes. She thought he was just another drifter. Until one quiet night, a single letter revealed the truth. He owned half the state, and a heart that hadn't loved in years. The late summer wind swept over the quiet town of Silver Pines, carrying the scent of hay, old leather, and stories that hadn't been told in decades. At the edge of town, where the road turned to gravel and the hills began to rise, a lone cowboy eased his chestnut stallion to a stop. Dust clung to his faded jeans. His hat was worn low. He looked like he hadn't said much in days, and preferred it that way. Cassidy Blake, 31, local diner owner and not one for nonsense, watched him from behind the counter as he tied up his horse outside and stepped inside for coffee. He didn't speak at first, just nodded once and sat by the window. "You want a menu, or you just looking for silence?" she asked, pouring him a cup. He looked up, just enough for her to see pale eyes that had seen far more than he let on. "Just coffee. Don't need much else." She smirked. "Suit yourself." The man came back the next day. And the next, always the same order, always the same corner booth. Locals whispered about the drifter. Some said he was running. Some said he'd lost everything. Some said nothing, because he never gave them anything to hold on to. But Cassidy noticed things no one else did, like the way he traced invisible patterns on his mug, or how he always tipped more than he should, or how he stared a little too long at the family photo on her wall, her late father in his sheriff's uniform. "You just passing through?" she asked one morning. "Maybe," he said, "or maybe I'm remembering where I came from." There was something lonely in his voice, not pitiful, haunted. What she didn't know was that the man sitting quietly in her diner each morning, the one who spoke like a whisper and dressed like a ghost, wasn't just a drifter. He was Beau Calder, heir to one of the largest land empires in the American West. And he hadn't let anyone close to him. Not in years. Not since the night the person he trusted most betrayed him. Until now. Until her. The days passed, and Beau Calder became less of a stranger and more of a pattern in Cassidy's life. He never asked for much, never shared too much either. But he listened. Closely. Especially when Cassidy talked about her father, her broken dreams of leaving town, or the diner she kept alive out of loyalty, not love. "You ever think of just riding out?" he asked one evening as the sun dipped behind the pines. She leaned against the counter, drying a coffee cup. "Every day," she admitted, "but it's hard to let go of places that remember you, even when they don't give you much reason to stay." Beau nodded slowly, like he understood better than most. "Sometimes staying hurts less than returning to what's gone." Cassidy tilted her head. "That sounds a lot like regret." "Maybe it is," he said quietly. That night, after closing, Cassidy stepped outside to find Beau sitting on the porch rail, gazing up at the stars like they owed him answers. "You got folks around here?" she asked. "Used to," he said, then added, "but not anymore. My name doesn't mean much around here, least not in ways that matter." "Try me," she challenged softly. He looked at her, the moonlight catching the edges of something vulnerable in his expression. "Beau Calder," he said finally. She blinked. The name hit like a sudden wind. Calder, as in Calder Ranches, as in half the land this town sat on. "You're that Calder?" He nodded once. "Or was, before I walked away from all of it." "Why would you walk away from a fortune?" He looked at her then. Not like a drifter, but like a man whose chest held 1,000 unspoken storms. Because sometimes, money buries more than it saves, and love can betray you worse than enemies. Cassidy didn't speak. She didn't have to. She just sat beside him on the rail and handed him a slice of pie wrapped in wax paper. "Pie doesn't fix everything," she murmured. "No," Beau said, taking it. "But kindness like that? It reminds you that not everything is lost." And for the first time in years, he smiled. Not because he was healed, but because he wasn't invisible anymore. Not to her, not here, not in Silver Pines. The next morning, Cassidy found a worn envelope tucked beneath the sugar jar on Beau's usual table. Her name was written in bold, steady ink. She hesitated before opening it. Inside, a letter. Short, honest, and something that made her breath catch. "Cassidy, I didn't come back to be found. I came back to say goodbye. But somehow your quiet kindness turned a goodbye into something I didn't know I needed. Hope." The Calder name broke more things than it built. But I never wanted to carry it like a crown. I wanted to leave it behind, until you reminded me that some legacies are worth rewriting. "Meet me tonight, just once, at the old water tower. If you don't come, I'll ride on. No hard feelings. But if you do, maybe we figure out what this is before the dust settles." B. Cassidy folded the letter with trembling fingers. She hadn't been this scared since her father's funeral, not of the man, but of what he might awaken. That night, she stood beneath the crooked silhouette of the water tower, the wind tugging at her denim jacket. She almost turned back, until she heard the soft clink of spurs. Beau emerged from the shadows, not dressed like a drifter, but in the worn but intentional look of someone ready to stop running. "You came," he said. "You gave me a choice," she replied. They stood in silence, until Cassidy asked the one question that had been burning since she opened the letter. "Why really did you walk away from it all?" Beau's jaw tensed. "Because my brother forged my signature, sold land to cover gambling debt. When I exposed it, my family turned on me. Said I was shaming the name. So I left. Let them keep the money. The title. All of it." He looked at her, voice lower now. "I only came back to see the place one last time. But then I saw you. And suddenly this town felt like something more than a memory." Cassidy took a breath, heart pounding. "I'm not a fixer, Beau. I don't want to patch up broken cowboys and send them on their way." "I don't need fixing," he said. "I just want someone who sees me before the name. And you always did." The wind blew softly. Coyotes howled in the distance. Cassidy reached into her pocket, pulled out the letter, and held it up. "Then let's rewrite the next page together." And in that quiet moment under Silver Pines' starlit sky, two people who thought they were too far gone finally stopped running. Not from their pasts, but toward something real. Weeks passed, and the gossip in Silver Pines shifted. The drifter. Turns out he wasn't drifting at all. Beau Calder, once the invisible heir who rode in like a shadow, was now helping mend fences, literally and figuratively. He started small, patching up the broken stable behind Cassidy's diner, hauling lumber for the church steps, fixing up the run-down library wing his family once donated and forgot. People began to wave first. The mayor even stopped by for coffee. No press, no pressure, just a nod that said, "We were wrong. You belong here." Cassidy, meanwhile, didn't change much. She still ran the diner with grit and grace, still poured too much coffee in the mornings and forgot to charge regulars when their kids looked tired. But her eyes held something lighter now. And sometimes, when Beau wasn't working, he'd sit at the counter with a paint-splattered hat, watching her like she was the only reason the sun came up. Because to him, she was. One night, under those same water tower stars, Cassidy looked at him, brow raised. "So what now, Mr. Half the State?" Beau smirked. "Now, I build something that can't be bought. He reached into his coat and handed her a new envelope, this one crisp, legal, and real. Inside, a deed to the land the diner sat on, signed over to Cassidy Blake. "You gave me something money never could," he said. "A reason to stay, and I want you to know, this place will always be yours, just like I want to be." Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't cry. She just whispered, "You sure you're not just a drifter?" "Not anymore," he said. "Now I'm just a man who finally found home." A photo would later hang on the wall of Cassidy's diner. A dusty hat, 2 cups of black coffee, and a note scrawled beneath it. He came in quiet, but stayed louder than anyone ever had.